So I just wanted to make sure everyone's kind of familiar with some of the waveform changes that happen within arteries as we're approaching a stenosis or a blockage. So typically in arteries, we have a nice laminar flow. You know, fast velocities are going to be in the center of that vessel. Nice healthy artery, we have a nice triphasic waveform. But as we start approaching a blockage or a stenosis, we start having some changes to our waveform. So the first thing that you might notice a little bit before a blockage is the waveform starts to become what's called dampened. So the velocities start dropping a little bit. It becomes higher resistance because we now have a blockage in that vessel. So there's more resistance, more force that blood flow is meeting against. But it's further down the stream. So we're not quite at that blockage yet, but we might start noticing some changes. So the waveform becomes dampened. The velocities start dropping a little bit. Depending on how severe this blockage is, we may start to encounter that systolic thumping, where we don't have any sort of diastolic component, and we just get that little systolic thumps, basically every time the heart beats, we get forward flow, and that's it. As we move closer to that stenosis or blockage, when we start getting the narrowing, that's when we start getting that increases in velocity. So as we approach the stenosis, because of Bernoulli's, pressure starts dropping. Pressure decreases. So as we enter into that stenosis, through that stenosis is where we're getting our highest velocities. So that's when our waveform will undergo those drastic changes. You'll now wind up with a monophasic waveform, very fast velocities. Depending on how fast it is, you'll get filling in of that spectral window, you'll get spectral broadening. But this is where your maximum velocities are going to be. And that's where your pressures are going to be the lowest within that stenosis. After you get past the stenosis, we wind up with something called turbulent flow. So that stenosis now creates these little eddy currents. So it's no longer laminar flow after we've passed through that stenosis, and these little eddy currents are basically like the blood flow is swirling around, making like little spirals. So blood flow is going in all different directions as it gets ejected through out of that stenosis. And our waveform is going to be very turbulent. You're going to have basically no spectral window at all at this point. You'll even potentially see, Doppler signals below that baseline as well, because it's going in multiple different directions. So we get blood flow above and below that baseline. So it's going to be turbulent. It's going to also be low resistance. So we can put all under both of these low resistance, both within the stenosis and after the stenosis. Low resistance, low resistance. And as we progress further down the vessel, post stenosis or after stenosis. So think of this pre-stenotic, within the stenotic lesion, and then post stenosis, after stenosis. So being able to label your what your waveforms are going to be, or is it going to be a pre-stenotic waveform, or is it going to be a post-stenotic waveform? So after we get past our turbulent phase, we're going to wind up in our post-stenotic phase, and this is going to be our tardus parvis waveform. So post-stenotic tardus parvis waveform. Keep saying that. So post-stenotic tardus parvis waveform. So our characteristics of the tardus parvis waveform, it's going to be low velocities and a waveform that's drawn out. So we have a slow acceleration time. So these are going to be like your little pyramids. So I put a velocity of 10. So it's going to be very slow velocity, low resistance, and slow acceleration time. So the time it takes to get to that peak systolic velocity is going to be drawn out. So it's going to be a slow slope building up, and it's going to be a gradual decrease as well. So this is post-stenotic tardus parvis waveform, also low resistance. Any questions about any of that? For you viewers at home, reporting on Zoom, say hi. Say hi to your class. All right. So this will be posted on DCL too for you guys to review.